I gotta get back
into the second episode of Mystery March.
That's right. Hi, welcome back. We're the Book Mavens. I'm Rachel. This is Amanda, and this is our second week into our Mystery March project. And today we're going to be talking about
also known as
Churchill.
Amanda Tortures Rachel.
No,
with mystery novels.
It hasn't been that torturous. Okay, well, just Rachel has learned a lot about her reading style going through mysteries and the things I think that's always good. I think that when we explore other genres and other things that we aren't so familiar with, we learn about ourselves as readers, and it's definitely been a learning journey for me, and I appreciate it because now I know, like, if I want to read a mystery, I know what type of mystery that's going to appeal to me, and I think that that's good. I think it'll help me make better choices for what I want to read and how much enjoyment I'm going to get out of it. So, you know, these are all good things. Learning experiences.
I'm enjoying the ride as well. I'm actually just enjoying watching Rachel read a lot of these.
Well, you know.
Really great live text chains that she reads, which is always fun for me.
Yeah, well, nothing compared with the "and then there were none."
Yeah, that was
text
great.
Chain, because that was very much like real time what was happening.
But also, I think that showed how suspenseful / fast moving the end is. Like the end wraps up so fast in that book.
It does.
I think
well, I mean, it's a short
just like 2 minutes later.
Yeah.
This is great.
It does move. All right. So for our second week, we read Mr. Churchill's Secretary by Susan Ilia McNeil. All right. And so this is the first of a series of books that are focused around our main character, Maggie Hope, and her adventures and trials and tribulations during World War II in England.
It's more of an espionage type mystery. Like, it's not based around, there is, you know, crimes and things in the traditional sense that get perpetrated, but it's set in a wartime setting, so it's really more focused on like the larger espionage warfare. So that is different than and then there were none, and some of the other mysteries we're going to read this month. This one's a little bit more of that like wartime thriller, espionage thriller. But it's definitely a historical cozy. Yeah.
I mean, you do have to suspend reality a little bit. Like when I was describing it to Amanda, because I finished this before she did, I said it's like Call the Midwife. If you've ever seen that show, like the relationship with the women in here is very Call the Midwife vibe. So I feel like it's a cross between like Call the Midwife and like the Peggy Carter TV series. If you watch
like
that. Yeah, doesn't that?
Yeah, I
feel like that kind of vibe. I mean, Maggie Hope is not as badass, I think, as Peggy Carter, but she's very, very smart and, you know, very much of a feminist and wanting to get into areas where men dominate, and it's a wartime situation, so that's where I kind of feel the Peggy Carter vibe.
She's a mathematician.
She's plucky.
I like that. She's plucky. Carter. She's a mathematician, so she's interested in puzzles, and her brain is very logical, and she's really feels like she's shut out of aside from academia, and even within academia, she's really felt shut out of a lot of meaningful war work because she's a woman. It felt authentic, the ways that, most of the ways I would say, that Maggie tries to like work past that feeling that she's being shut out, which I feel like a lot of women at the time, so women have the vote at this point in the US and in England. They're starting to become a lot more politically involved because of that. But there's still a lot of these stereotypical, like, you're supposed to get married and have babies, and that's, you know, that's a woman's place kind of thing. But
that wall for STEM in general that we're still trying to get over, and, you know, just seem like kind of at the beginning of that struggle of really trying to break through.
It felt very authentic, the ways where she confronted it when she could, but in a way that she still ends up working as a typing secretary in the typist pool, but she's working in 10 Downing. She's working for the Prime Minister. That's kind of like where the title of the book comes in. But she still takes her opportunities to basically like, I could be doing more.
She gets a little passive aggressive at times, which I like appreciate.
Because that's what I would do.
She's a little sassy, so
that's what I would do.
Yeah.
So it felt very realistic in that same. Now, suspension from reality. She just happens to have friends who are private secretaries to Churchill, and they desperately need someone to fill this slot, and it happens to be her who has this mystery father, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
little suspension of reality, but I liked it. I was here for the ride.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. This is definitely a cozy mystery. It's like there are stakes, but it's done in a kind of a simplified way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're invested. You want to know what's going to happen with Maggie Hope and all of these things. But like, once again, you set it aside. This is not going to be an emotionally devastating kind of read.
Mm-mm.
And, you know, it makes you interested. You want to see what's going to happen with Maggie Hope. I would definitely be interested in reading more of the series. It's a long series. I think there's like... There's at least 7 or 8 books.
Yeah,
at
least that I know.
Yeah.
Of. Yeah.
So I want to know what's going to happen with her and her journey, and I think it's done well. I mean, it's a comfortable read. You stay in it. You're in it. It's a quick read.
Yeah.
To me.
Other elements that you liked?
Well, I like her pluckiness. I like the relationship she has with her roommates, other women. They highlight other roles that women have had as well. Like one of her roommates, Sarah, is a ballet dancer, and talking about the changes. And I know that I read some things from the author about researching for Sarah and talking to former ballet dancers at the time. And so there's a lot of historical relevance to what's happening in terms of the ballet theater and how the war affected those. So I thought that was really interesting. So I did research a little bit about that. And I liked it. I think it's worth saying that there's a trigger warning. There's a conversation in here about rape. And we were talking about this off camera.
There's
nothing
it
detailed
past it
about
so
it.
quickly. I was like, oh, actually twice. There's 2 in there, but yeah, in terms of things that
it's the attitude or the approach that women had about rape.
Yeah, that nobody would believe them even if they came forward, which, I mean, not inaccurate, but it also was it was just strangely worded because, like, on the next page, she's talking about the guy, and she's like, well, he's not that bad. He's not that bad. He's not a total monster. And I was like, I'm pretty sure what you just described on the previous page qualifies.
It's our 21st century, mentality when it comes to rape, like that's just not okay. But I mean, it puts in perspective about how women in the 40s probably had to deal with this kind of crap all the time. Not like all the time, but like just how they would process and how they would try and warn their friends if something's going on, and just the idea that you'd still be in the same social circles as your rapist and just having to live with that.
Yeah, there is a very casual discussion of trauma, which on the one hand is I do think is true to the kind of British mentality, that whole stiff upper lip, which they talk about at times. And then of course there's the IRA connection in this book as well, because that's historically accurate at the time, and like they talk about the traumas and the violence there, and then on top of the wartime violence, like there is this almost casual discussion of trauma, which I think fits with the historical narrative in the sense of when you are absolutely surrounded by it constantly, there is almost a little bit of a numbing effect, right? And that's really hard to process as a reader now. And like looking at, it was just a really kind of sharp juxtaposition for me with the things that are happening in the world now. And then like reading this book, and it, there were just moments where I was like, oh my gosh, you just breezed right past that. But it does, like within the historical narrative, I did really like the author's style of like keeping you pace with where you were in the history. So she used Churchill's speeches largely as her like mile markers, if you will, in terms of the progress, and did it in a way that allowed the reader to kind of like, if you were not well versed in history of this time period, you would still keep up and understand kind of like where you were. But she didn't do it in a way where you felt like you were being like, it didn't feel like she was like lecturing you and trying to get you up to speed. She used the speeches in a really strategic way that made it kind of flow seamlessly within the story, but still allowed the reader to get the back knowledge that they needed to understand the stakes of where you were. So I thought that was done really, really well.
I agree with that. Yeah, it's very interesting how she handles trauma, because the trauma is done in just such a few kind of like scant sentences, because I think that the tone that she was going for with this book was, she didn't want to delve into the trauma. So it's acknowledged, but it's kind of talked about and then left, and then we just keep moving with the plot. And I think that's just about her tone. This isn't supposed to be like a trauma related book.
It's supposed to be a light read.
Yeah. So she does enough, I think, to understand that there's a lot more complexities to what's going on, and there's, more trauma, but that's just not her focus in this book, I think.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah. Which is very different than some of the other books you read that are very
some of these other books we read are real intense. This one's real.
Yeah, this is a light read.
Real different breeze blowing through when you're reading this one. But it's I do want to read, like, so of course whenever you start a new author and a new, in this case, like lead, I hate to call her a detective because that's not accurate, but like the lead character here, would you continue reading?
To me, this is more like a light suspense thriller-ish type, because it's a spy aspect. But it's not, to me, this isn't like a super mystery oriented series. Like there's a mystery component to it, but that to me is not like the forward plot.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if that
And that's how continues. I like my mysteries, I've determined. I like them where there are other things going on too, and there's just a component of mystery. That's where I like it.
And she liked that there was characters that she liked enough to root for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Maggie Hope is somebody you want to root for, and there's a very mild romance going on, which I thought she did really, really
it's
well.
It's pretty low-key, and I like that.
It is, yeah. I thought it was good, and there's just enough to keep you interested, and I like John, who is...
It definitely gave me Nancy Ned vibes.
Oh, okay.
Nancy Drew and Ned.
There you go.
Which, you know, Ned is her continuous, like, casual boyfriend throughout the whole series. So it's, I almost think it's in a way so that I will be interested to see, this is my projection for future books. I think that they will use John the same way Carolyn Keene used Ned, in the sense of it allows the focus to stay on the plot, like whatever the plot is, because in the back of your mind, like, oh, well, but there's John, and she's, you know, and now there's a war. So, you know, she used Ned that way too. Like when Nancy needed a date, she called Ned, and there were like occasionally these like really sweet moments between Nancy and Ned.
See, I like that.
And there are occasionally sweet moments between John and Maggie. And I think that's what it will do. I think John has become almost, I hate to say the placeholder, but he puts a pin in the romance thread.
Well, there's a war
so
going
that you
on.
move, like, well, no, but so that the reader moves on. Like you're not fixated on.
That's true.
You're not fixated on it, right? Because in the beginning of the book, and I said this, it is an establishment book, so she spends a lot more time on creating like the foreshadowing of the characters and the role they'll play. Like she talks about, you know, the twins who live in the house, but the twins are not really close with Maggie, so we know they'll be around, but probably not play a significant role, versus like Sarah or Paige. You know, she's establishing a lot of and it did feel a little gratuitous in moments, but I knew that this was a continuous series, so it didn't really take away from the overall impact of the story. And I can tell that it'll be important later. Like,
some of the the character development for some of the other characters, it just seems a little superfluous. Like it's just a lot of information that doesn't seem particularly relevant to the plot of this book. But that's going to come up later. And I was telling Amanda that I had read some of like the kind of like back cover information about some of the other books, and I know Sarah is going to take a primary role in another one. So they just give you enough. It is very much a setup a series book.
Yeah,
it's the first book to a series for sure, and it was written that way.
Okay, I will say one bone pick in terms of things she never answered.
Okay.
There's a scene where Chuck is going through her bag, and they never tell me why.
Oh, I know why. She wants information. She thinks that she has access to information because of her fiance. She's worried about her fiance.
I mean, I know that's the reason, but
that's why.
But that seems so superfluous.
I think it's just trying to talk about the desperation of what it would be like to be in a romantic relationship when you have your boyfriend, your significant other, who's in the RAF. You know, like this Royal Air Force. I mean, they got hammered.
Yeah, but they played it up like it was going to be a bigger deal, and then it wasn't. And I'm just like, that's just my one little bone to pick, like of like the thread that didn't get picked up that I like wait, but I want to, because you made a big deal out of it. She went and talked to Sarah about it later.
I think it was a red herring to throw us off from the other one. True. I think that was just a little herring where she'd be slightly suspicious, but it was suspicion of the wrong roommate. So maybe that was just like a throwaway.
That's my one thing.
I get that. Well, they never come back to it.
Yeah,
that's fair.
And it does the plots. Yeah, there's more than one plot going.
Yeah,
there's several. It kept it moving. So, all right. Anything else we need to say before we talk about? I think we did it.
Recommended? I think so. Yeah, I mean, I would recommend it. I think it was a really fun read, and it's fast. I think this would be a great another one, like in talking about like when and where we would read these, I think this is another one like we talked about, and then there were now to be a good plane book. This would be a good plane book too. I mean, this is, you can set it down, you can pick it back up, and it's something you could finish during the time you travel. You know what I mean? So this is like a beach read mystery to me.
Well,
like,
I will say for me, this is like a road trip book.
Yeah.
And I know this sounds so particular. People are nothing.
We're just talking about traveling because spring break's coming up, so I think like that's our mentality.
But like, well, the books I want on a plane are different than the books I want on a road trip, and I know that sounds so ridiculous. Oh, okay. This one's a road trip book for me because there is and maybe it's because I do have a lot more historical knowledge of this time. This one was not it wasn't particularly hard for me to read, to pick up and put down, like to go about my day. Like this morning I was doing chores and I would like read a little bit and then I was like doing something, and it wasn't hard for me to do that. So that stoppy-starty nature of like a road trip. Also, if you're in the car with other people and like they pause and talk to you, it wouldn't have upset me. Like if you were trying to talk to me during and then there were none, I'd have been upset. Which is why, for me, that one's a plane book because nobody talks to you. You can be alone. Yeah, nobody talks on planes. It's so loud. Also, most of us are just up there trying to, we're just trying to get through this experience. But like, so that for me is the difference. Is this one I'm okay if you like being interrupted. Because it's not like the plot. It was great and I wanted to know, but it wasn't this like intensity. It wasn't an intense need to know. Which is usually what I want on a plane because I want it to make the time go faster.
Plus, there's things happening at a fairly steady pace. Unlike, and then there were none where it's just like bam, 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 bam.
Then there were none was just really pushing those pieces over.
Yeah, for sure. So you're just like, okay, I gotta know. So I get that.
Yeah, so that's for me. This is a road trip book.
That's fair.
Although, also, okay, in one of our earlier discussions, when we had the technical issues when we were recording and then there were none, we realized we have very different definitions of a beach read.
Well, we were talking about differences where you read more intense books and I go for like the trash romance kind of deal.
Oh, yeah,
like where, like
I want like a philosophical existential crisis.
She wants this
that's
deep
what I want to
thinking
read
thing. I don't want that. I want like more like a smutty read. Like that's like where
I want like a Friedrich Bachmann,
I just want like something fun.
I want to sit at the ocean and feel small and insignificant.
No,
like I want a full-on existential crisis.
I don't want
That's what I want at the beach.
I want things that are, not necessarily light, but things that aren't going to suck me in. Where like I could just set it down and it'll be okay. Like I just something lighter. Is how
we've learned that about ourselves. We have very different definitions of beach read.
Well, okay, so like I'm going to Greece this summer, and so I have set aside books that I want to read in Greece. So they're all like primarily mythology based. So like I set aside like if you follow like neon gods, like
we'll have to make a video of this list because let me tell you, this list
it's getting just larger because the
be like, are you losing here, ma'am?
And well, none of them. And so they're like, I'm trying to get like paperback versions of all of these. So they're like A Touch of Darkness. So like books that are kind of like gotten mixed reviews in terms of like quality writing is what I deem them. But like things that I could just pick up and toss, and it's just not a big deal. And
I just have this great image of Rachel just casually around to Greece, like leaving these little questionable books all over Greece. Like a little trashy romance.
Yeah. Like those are the books I'm setting aside, like lore, just like a YA myth thing with gods, like Hunger Games. She's like, I've been going to the bookstore with her, so I've seen a lot of it, and I'm like, don't you own that? And she goes, yeah, but not in paperback. And I'm like, yeah. So okay, I'm purposely picking ones that I can, like, if they get damaged, I'm going to be on a boat for 7 days, so, like, that I don't mind if anything bad happens to them, but, like, definitely along this mythology bend. And like I said, these are books that were, like I said, mixed reviews. Ones that are not like high fantasy. These aren't like Robin Hobb level books. No. I would say these are just fun reads that I can giggle about and then
leave for someone else.
Perhaps I might bring them back depending on how good they are. But like, there's some really quality silly books that are just fun reads, and so those are the kind of travel beach reads that I do that are just kind of silly, or that I'm not going to be, I don't think, truly emotionally devastated, but are just more fun. So
yeah, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to take Anxious People, Friedrich Bachman's new book, to this bachelorette beach.
That's not for me. Yeah, great.
Maybe, that's my plan.
Little side road.
But, that's the kind of the thing. This is it's a nice,
it's a lighter read,
easy but interesting read.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, it was not too much history. If that's not your thing, it was enough that you were interested. And I do think it was less stress because, spoiler alert, guys. Britain does not get invaded during World War II.
Yeah,
well, not to be technical, but technically some of the Guernsey Islands were occupied, which were British. But London did not get occupied. Spoiler alert. So I think that helped took some of the pressure off mentally, because that this is not like an alternate history book. I think that did take some of the pressure off as well. But I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fun. I'm interested at one point in time, if I, because I can be a bit of a mood reader. So if I'm looking to maybe do something lighter that I'm not going to be emotionally stressed out about, or isn't a huge commitment time-wise, I'll go and probably pick up a couple of the other ones.
Yeah.
And give them a read. But my TBR is just so massive.
Yours is out of control. I think it could be a good palate cleanser.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. Because you could knock this out in 1 or 2 days. Honestly, depending on your time.
I'd say it's a quality palate cleanser. Yeah. Not like my Score to Kettle.
Your who?
Score to Kettle. That was the first. You remember the Facebook ad that got me? And I read 3 of them, but then I found the higher quality Nancy Warren ones.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
Do you remember I told you about her? She's the witch who didn't know she was a water witch because she grew up in Arizona.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Okay. Well, I read 3 of those, guys, and then I moved on because I found Nancy Warren, who...
You did finally wrap those up, though.
I know. We'll talk about Nancy. We'll have to talk about Nancy Warren in another episode, but I just want you to know that I joined her Facebook group, Nancy's Nitwits, and it's everything I ever hoped it would be. But I'll say that for another episode, because I feel like we've already wandered.
We've definitely wandered. But it's fun wandering. It's fun to think about it. The warmer weather approaching and people getting out and about and spending some time on the beach or traveling. That, with COVID, more people are traveling now because it's safer and whatnot, and restrictions have gone down. So it's kind of interesting. We'd love to know what you're planning on reading as we were hitting those vacation days, and what you would define as a leisure read versus.
I would be interested to know: are you a more intense, thoughtful beach reader? Are you more of a more relaxed?
Kind of just fun.
Are you more of a relaxed, fun beach reader?
This is when I try out some other authors.
I'm just interested to know if I am as singular as I think I might be in this circumstance. I don't think I'm alone, but
I don't know. I just go for something a little lighter.
If you're a deep, thoughtful teacher, could you just leave a comment so that I would know that I'm just not totally out here by myself? That would be so much. That would be so great. Thank you so much.
We're just looking to find our people. That's all.
We're just saying. That's what I'm saying.
It's about.
We're all looking for a group to get along. Just like the girls in the house. No,
they're all very different. They're all very different.
But you know what? But they pull together when it matters. Except for that whole betrayal.
Yeah. But you need to read it. No spoilers.
Read it for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So join us next week for our conversation about the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. We will also explain why it has 2 different titles. Because there's the 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I investigated this, solved my own mystery.
I'll know too. I don't.
And why this copy is 7.5 Deaths versus 7 Deaths. Oh. There is a whole little side story about that, and I will explain that to you in our next episode. So if you're following along and you're reading along with us, this will be our next read, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, so join us next time. Like and subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.